right, so I think we will get started with today's session. So welcome everybody. I'm Nancy Ford and I'm a professor of physics at Simon Fraser University. And I'm also the chair of the Community Engagement Committee of the Division of Biological Physics of the APS. And so one thing that started during the pandemic was a series of online events. And we have found these to be really interesting. Lots of members have said they've enjoyed them. And so we're continuing this roughly monthly series of events this year. I'm just going to take a brief moment to show you how to learn about them in case you learned about this by a direct email and you haven't seen our website. So let me just share this screen. So if you Google like APS DBIO or anything, you get find our Division of Biological Physics homepage. There's lots of information about a variety of things on this page, including prizes and awards that you may wish to apply for. But one thing that is most relevant to this is if you click workshops and networking, then what you see is a list of all of the events that we have held to date. And this is also where you will be able to find out about the upcoming events that are planned for this year. So we will be continuing to use Engage and the emails to DBIO members to learn about these, but you may also wish to just visit this page on your own to learn about upcoming events, or if there's events that happened in the past that you are interested in and you missed, for example, postdoc training, you click here and there's a link to the recording of the seminar. So this particular one will also be recorded and posted online, so the people who aren't able to join us live are able to see it afterwards. If there are any events that you are interested in hearing about or hosting or whatever, drop me a line and I'm happy to connect with the committee about it. I can tell you the next event that we have planned will be June, I think tentatively June 13th. And it's about teaching biological physics, and the focus is going to be on data science. So we've certainly found our teaching focused sessions to be really engaging and lots of great discussion. So hopefully you can join us for that. Keep your eyes open. We'll also have an event for people from primarily undergraduate institutions and a number of events focused on career development for more junior members of our community. But today, the focus is on the newest physical review journal, PRX Life, which is of particular interest, I think, to those of us in the DBIO community, because it is focused on our interests. Yay! So I'm going to turn the floor over to our two guests who are going to tell you all about it. I can moderate questions. If you have any burning questions during their presentation, then feel free to either drop them in the chat or raise your hand and we could call on you. Otherwise, we will have lots of time at the end for questions and answers. So do make note of any questions you have and save them for that. So let me just introduce them. So Margaret Gardel is a professor of physics at the University of Chicago, and she is the editor-in-chief of PRX Life, its very first one. And Serena Bradde is the managing editor, I think that's the right title, from the Physical Review Journal side of things. And so the two of them are going to tell us what they think we need to know about this amazing new journal. So I'm going to turn the floor over to them.
Yeah. So should I share my presentation? I think so, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see it or no? What are you seeing is my screen, right?
Yeah.
You just have to turn into presenter mode, Serena.
I think it's already there. So wait, so sorry.
We had this all set up and then I said, oh, can I share my screen? And that was the end of that. Ah, dear. Try again.
Okay, now it's saying that it failed. Give me a second. Where is Zoom?
There we go.
Yay, that looks
Okay.
great.
I made it. Okay, so first of all, I cannot see you anymore. So yeah, here you are. So thank you for the presentation, Nancy. This is really a pleasure for us to present the journal to this audience. That's the audience we care. So I'm gonna just briefly introduce a little bit like the reasoning why we open this journal and present a little bit the journals in general. So physical review journals, as I wrote here, the journals that care about your science. And what do they have to do with the American Physical Society? I think it's not clear to everybody, so I'll try to explain it in a minute. And so my goal is that by the end of the presentation, you might all care more about physical review journals. So first of all, physical review journals are published by the American Physical Society. The American Physical Society was born more than 100 years ago, and since then has been growing quite, steadily. And you can see that after the beginning, where only 36 physicists came together to create the American Physical Society, now we have more than 50,000 members that worldwide. And then the American Physical Society published the physical review journals that are 17 peer-reviewed journals plus a magazine. And I think that's what actually gives us a voice right now. So you see here, they publish articles throughout the year. So at the beginning, we had very few articles. And I think by the 80s and 90s, there is a huge step and huge growth. And if you think about the peer review process that was like thought to work for this amount of papers, that might be not completely surprising to you if I say that whatever was working there doesn't work anymore here, right? So journals have been trying to adapt to this new scale of manuscripts. So that's why we have different journal type with different criteria, because not everybody can read all the manuscripts. So we want to give scientists a way to sort and categorize manuscripts. So I think the role of journals has been changed, and as such, the role of editors. And I'll mention a few things at the end, towards the end of my presentation. But so, but we are not operating in a vacuum. So the publishing landscape is very complex and very competitive. Here I show, for example, APS versus other publisher. And you see that these are only papers published in physics or categorized as physics. So you see that right now, like, we are not the only one publishing physics. There are many other publishers that publish physics. And I think we can distinguish more or less two major publishers based on their, based on the fact that they are commercial or non-profit. Although, everybody is a little bit different. So they try to offer different like service to others. But like what I want to emphasize is that APS is a non-profit organization, and you all know what kind of things that APS does. And I think it's worth saving the journals in order for this the society to be sustainable. And of course, APS operates with different priorities than other commercial publishers. And you see here that like new publishers coming in, they're growing very fast, and they're like taking up a lot of the market that we cover. Though, this is a very competitive market, I think that APS is still doing quite good. And in particular, we publish a good chunk of highly cited paper in physics. That means that we still own some sort of priority in the physics world. And also we are really proud of the fact that like it's been 12 consecutive years that the Nobel Prize in Physics have been awarded to PRL research. So you see here, like from 2011, we got like a streak of 13 Nobel Prize. So we're very proud of this, and I hope that like you too. And how does APS manage to follow the community and be able to be successful in this competitive market? I think there are like a few strands of the physical review. One of them is the board of editors. So we try try to fit in between having like independent professional editors and academic editors. So we have professional editors that train, but yet connected with the communities through, for example, the editorial board. And Margaret is going to present what is the editorial board of PRX Life. So we try to give a fair evaluation that doesn't depend on your competitors to everybody, but like we still want to be connected to the community needs. And also, like, we offer like publishing highlights. For example, Physics Magazine can highlight research. We are connected to scientific journalists, and on top of that, we can also offer like some nice highlights. I mean, if your paper is important enough, so just let us know, publish your best research in Physical Review, and we'll make sure that everybody can read it. And another important step is that like Physical Review was one journal, but it then branched into many more. In particular, the Physical Review letters started because it was impossible to read all the manuscripts. So people needed like a venue for important results. And so Physical Review letters was born, and then Review of Modern Physics. And then the Physical Review was too big to be published in a single volume. So it was split into A, B, C, D, E, that are topical journals. And then the newest edition is Materials, Fluid, Applied, and etc. But like I think what we want to emphasize here is the open access channel, the newest one that started with Physical Review X 11 years ago, and now after the success of PRX, there are three new babies: PRX Quantum, Energy, and Life. So, like, as I said, like after publication, if the paper like is important enough, can be picked up by physics, and they can write viewpoints that are written by experts on the papers that we publish, focus session that are journalistic stories, or synopsis that are short editorial. But like if your research is really big, we can also have like something fancy. Like this was for the muon G2 anomaly. They contracted a PhD Comics. I think you might know him to present the results. So this is this is what we do. And then like I mean, going directly to PRX Life. So APS is happy to foster the growth of the scientific community at the interface of physics and biology. And as such, we open PRX Life that after that leverage the experience and the reputation of Physical Review X. So PRX Life is open access, online, and very highly selective. And the challenge that we see with this new journal is to maintain our identity as physicists while being inclusive to new science at the interface of physics, biology, and neuroscience. So, and to do that, so as I told you, so we have this different model in which there is an editor, that is, I mean, a professional editors trained as a scientist. I did an extensive career in research before joining APS. And now, like, I've been six years working before for Physical Review E and now for PRX Life. So that like give me enough perspective, enough distance in order to evaluate papers in a fair way. So that's one side. And on the other side, we have the lead editor. You can call it editor-in-chief, but like in APS, we try to create new words. The lead editor is instead the person that has the vision, like scientific vision, and help us like navigating the community. So with this, I'll leave it to Margaret, our lead editor. And yeah.
Great, thanks, Serena. Yeah, so so in addition to myself and Serena, we've assembled an editorial board that's comprised of, at this point, 13 scientists across the world that have expertise that complement Serena's mind. So the way manuscripts get handled is that Serena manages all the manuscripts, but then she solicits advice from the editorial board and myself in making editorial decisions, and also for finding a reviewers for manuscripts. And this editorial board will expand as we see the types of submissions that are coming in. You can go to the next slide. So in terms of the scope of the type of work that we're interested, we're really interested. We made a template off of what the types of subjects that the Division of Biological Physics covers at the American Physical Society meeting, the March meeting. And so we really want to cover all scopes of these types of topics in biological physics, ranging from molecular scale biophysics all the way up to systems, ecosystems, and systems of organisms. So importantly, what we want to do is make this journal a place for content that the scientists may not have chosen to publish in the PR publishing landscape. And I think we haven't said this explicitly yet, but since we are part of the PRX family, we can accept referrals from PRX. And then we also can refer papers to, say, PRE or PR fluids. So this fits in a niche of being able to accept referrals from PRX and then to these other journals. And we really want to be inclusive of all types of methodologies, experimental theory, and computational in all areas of biological physics. The field, importantly, before we go on, the field has matured to the point where we are a community. We review each other's work, and sometimes there's we want to be writing these articles for our broader audience, right? So we want to we want to have the journal be a place where the ideas can be communicated to our community, and we don't need to feel that we have to sell it for a more sort of physics-y community where less biological detail, or sell it to a biology community where, say, all the theory is put in a supplementary data. So really, we want the type of work to be inclusive of the type of science that we like to do. So you can go to the next slide there. So as I mentioned, because we are in this intermediate space between, say, PRE and PRX, there is an editorial selection process that goes on whereby Serena does select with advice from the editorial board some fraction of the articles to go out for peer review. And so these decisions are made based on how impactful the studies are thought to have in the field. And obviously these ideas must be technically rigorous. The technical rigor is decided at the stage of peer review. We really want the articles that are published in this journal to push our understanding of the physics of living systems and really drive these fields into new directions, provide new ideas of how to connect interdisciplinary areas within this interface, develop new technologies, both experimental and theoretical approaches that would be impactful for understanding physics of living systems, and really push the field forward. So that's the type of research that we are looking for in this journal. If you go to the next slide. Yeah, so if I start with the right-hand column of this, so Serena, in her capacity as managing editor, is really making an evaluation with consultation from the editorial board on there's a step before sending the article out for peer review over what the type of significance, the likelihood of significance and breadth this work is going to have and potential impact. And so she does a lot of homework and work. It's been wonderful to see her process in doing this. She asks a lot of advice from scientific experts and reaches out to people outside the editorial board as well to really form her opinion about this work to see whether it should be sent out for peer review. And then at the peer review stage, this is where really the technical rigor of the studies are found. And the referees really evaluate in detail the methodologies and the approaches used and the conclusions drawn from the paper. In addition, provide their insight on what the potential impact of the work is going to be. Okay, so that's the criteria. So if you go to the next slide, Serena. So one thing that I was really, and I'm excited about with this journal, is the ability to have a platform for this community to come together in ways that right now, because we publish in many disparate journals, doesn't exist. currently. So the PRX Life will have content that includes not only original peer-reviewed research articles, but also short perspectives and reviews that will be in areas within our field. In addition, it will we will have collections of articles that will typically be brought together on a certain topic. And that these will typically be brought together by a perspective. So this is a way for different perspectives on a field as it's emerging to be able to provide what the future exciting areas in each topic is. The reviews will also be short, which and will be a way for students to learn about different and each other to learn about different topics of the field. So this slide has sort of more details about these perspectives and reviews. These will be mostly invited content that we solicit with guidance from the editorial board. Although we do get suggestions for submissions, and if you have ideas for the type of content that you think would be of interest to the field, we'd be more than happy to look at consider them. So yeah, so we're gonna the journal will also have these different types of article contents for our field. And if you go to the next slide, Serena. So another thing that I'm particularly excited about is we're testing out a new feature of collaborative peer review. Again, in such a highly interdisciplinary field, it can be very frustrating as an author to have your work sent out for peer review and that get two very disparate types of reviews back. And then you feel like the editor either picks one or the other. Usually when you get more frustrated when it's a negative reviewer that they side with. So what we're doing is having a very light collaborative review period whereby after the reviews are sent in, Serena sends a note back thanking the reviewers for the reviews that they wrote, and then in this note there also contains all the reviews that were submitted, and offers the opportunity over a period of 24 to 48 hours to submit comments on the other reviews. So that if there was a high amount of disagreement, this allows the opportunity for the different reviewers to comment about the other reviews and what their perspective was. And Serena can talk more about how this, I mean, we're just reviewing the initial manuscripts right now, but so far the feedback on this has been positive. If you go to the next slide. Oh, so is that the first thing, a quote that somebody said? Serena?
Yeah.
Oh, I just on the slide. Yeah, so one reviewer found the collaborative review very useful. First of all, the reviewers the referees are actually responding to these comments. They're actually providing feedback after they get the initial email from Serena. They've actually been shown to change their reports and recommendation on the manuscripts after they receive this feedback. And they start to understand a little bit more about what is subjective or shared among the common referees. And so this has been really helpful for Serena to then make a better informed decision going forward with the manuscript with this step. So this collaborative feature has really been helping her as well. So there's two things that we didn't touch upon in the slides that I want to just say before we open the floor for discussion. So I've been working with Serena over the past couple months as we see our first submissions. And there's a few things that I would really give guidance for people submitting manuscripts. First of all, we have spent a lot of time expanding. We're getting manuscripts that were not typically submitted to the PR family journals. And this means that the reviewers that are needed to review these manuscripts are not in the database, the PR database. So Serena and I have spent a huge amount of time trying to identify suitable reviewers. What I notice when people submit their manuscripts is that people tend to go to a very small number of scientists that are very unlikely to have the time to review manuscripts. And I would encourage anybody interested in reviewing, submitting manuscripts to think about early career scientists, including advanced postdoctoral researchers that you've interacted with, that you think would serve as good peer reviewers. So expand the scope of reviewers, of people that you would like to be included in evaluation of your work. And if that reviewer base can be expanded, it will make our community stronger. Like, these people will start being engaged in the process of reviewing articles, and we will and Serena has we try to provide as much guidance to these early career reviewers as possible. But I would encourage all of us to think about expanding the type of people we ask to review papers, the scope of people. That's my one, and I had another thought, but it's escaping me at the moment. Yeah, so I think that's it. So this is the last promotional thing. Obviously, the journal was just launched about 2.5 months ago at the March meeting. We're gearing up to get our first issue published. So there's been several papers, manuscripts going through the pipeline now. And so we're having a lot of fun sorting through these submissions. And through the end of 2023, the publication charges will be waived by the APS. And I think this journal is a really exciting opportunity for the biological physics community. Just as a resource for us, as Serena mentioned at the beginning, this is a society-driven journal. So all the efforts that we put into building our efforts of our community, both in divisional biological physics as a unit, but also within our journal, are ways to make our community stronger and help us improve us. So we really appreciate your contributions, both in the science you submit, but also agreeing to be reviewers and any requests that Serena makes from you about other types of evaluations. So with that, I think we can open up the floor for questions. That was a pretty high level presentation, and we are more than happy to get a little bit more nitty gritty about specifics, depending on what folks are interested in talking about.
Great. So thank you so much, Serena and Margaret, for the really awesome presentation to introduce us to PRX Life. Let's give them a thank you. Yay, I'm clapping on behalf of everybody. So it's now time for open Q&A. I think to run this most smoothly, the easiest thing would be is if you are able to, like if you can ask your question yourself, then put up your hand in Zoom, and that way we can see who has a question and you'll be called on. If you are not able to ask your question yourself verbally, you can also put it in the chat, and I will keep an eye on both of those features and do my best to moderate. So yes, I'm sure there's lots of questions, and as usual, it's sometimes a little slow to get going. We welcome questions from anyone, whether you're a grad student or a senior faculty member or anybody. Maybe I can start off following up on your last point, Margaret, about expanding the reviewer database. Is there a way that people who are interested in reviewing for PRX Life can put themselves on your radar, or do they require someone to suggest them as a reviewer in order to be added?
Well, I think I can take this question, probably it's more technical. So we have like several ways you can submit a request to the APS portal, but like this is like a very indirect way, so they don't reach me directly. So I think the best way to be like the most effective ways to be included by your advisor. So when I send manuscript out for review, and then your advisor like can include you in the review process. In this way, I learn about the new person, and also there is some training part associated to it. So they also check the quality of the report. So I can trust the quality of the report because the senior scientist kind of sign it off, but like also this is a training process. So we definitely encourage this as the optimal way. There are other ways directly reaching out and say, I want to review. And the important thing is that I want a CV, but also in particular, a set of expertise in which you can review it.
Yeah. So if you're an independent scientist, you could just email Serena or I.
Yes. And then
if you're a postdoc, then the best way to do it is through your advisor. I think so.
That's more or less. So, but if you email directly, make sure that you explicitly say what your expertise are. If you're an experimentalist, a theoretician, both, and then what kind of manuscript you want to handle. So then I can tailor the manuscript better, because I mean, it's difficult to figure it out from the website sometimes if people do experiments or theory, right? So it really requires to me to like learn more. So it's better if they present it directly as CV with like the expertise, the keywords, and everything that can help for me to associate the research with the manuscript. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you. All right, Daniel.
For the perspectives, it might be nice to try to get some which are from non-physicists, but with the physicist audience. And is that something which you might try to solicit?
That's a good point. That's a good point. We need to have the right people, right? That like will be read and or like understood by our audience. But yeah, there is no limit in principle from the. I mean, they can write a perspective even if they're not physicists, for sure. And this is a good point. I think
if you have suggestions, Daniel, you should let
us
know.
Exactly. That's a very good point, actually, because this is like where bridging towards like closing the gap between physics and biology require effort also from the other side, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point.
Other questions? All right, while we wait for some, then I'm curious as to whether there have been any surprises in the initial submissions in terms of maybe an area that you hadn't thought about being represented by PRX Life, and then you see this paper and you're like, ooh, actually, or other things, you know, you're launching a new journal. This is not something that one does every day or year or lifetime. Are there any surprises along the way?
I think we should be careful about talking about surprising content for a few reasons.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Absolutely.
I don't really want to.
No. Good point.
No, but I think one thing that ever since I started thinking about this a year ago, I mean, Serena's been thinking about this a lot longer, and going back to when I was serving on DBIO, I think that on the executive committee, I think it's really been fun for me to realize how important it is. You know, usually as scientists, we're focused so much on our lab environment and maybe our department, right? And how different communities can be built through effective processes, such as making the Division of Biological Physics a stronger organization, right? Such as like what you're doing now, Nancy, but that the importance of a journal. So in my own research, right, there are certain areas of quantitative biology that are very well represented by certain journals. And I know exactly where I can go to for very robust reviewing, right? And they are going to be received by the community. Basically, in certain areas of biophysics, I have very limited options, right? There wasn't, and also even trying to figure out, you know, and you'd get very sort of different types of reviews. You'd try to figure out whether you'd water down the experiments or the biology or water down the theory. So I think this is a real opportunity. And if you don't have those mechanisms for people to really do the work that they want to do, it's hard to create new fields, right? So I think this is a really important opportunity for the group, for the community at large. And I think the other thing that I have felt strongly about for a long time, but now even feel more so, is the importance of scientists in terms of choosing nonprofit publishing options, right? I mean, this is something where our scientific societies is what supports us as communities. And so we can really build those communities together. So I think we're giving our time a lot for the time we spend reviewing, right? And the work we want back when people review our papers. And so that's something that I think I really feel is important about starting a new journal.
Yeah, I mean, if I was surprised, I mean, we got a very good start actually. So that wasn't like that wasn't trivial, right? So for me, like the biggest surprise is that the community is really ready, and I think it's really the right time. So I mean, it's not a surprise, but I'm glad.
Serena's being kept very busy.
Yes, exactly. So, but that's pretty cool. And then another thing is that the collaborative review process. I mean, I like it a lot. I mean, people like it a lot. I mean, I see people responding like one day after I share the correspondence. So it's pretty much people care and I like it. And I'm glad that we are actually more transparent, so people can see how decisions are made, also the reviewers. And then we also like send all the editorial decision to the reviewers at the first round. So in order to make it more transparent. And so that's that helps, I mean, restoring the faith in the system. I mean, it's not like, it's not really this black box in which we think in isolation, but we really try to assess the quality and the novelty of the manuscripts as best as we can. So that's good from my side.
That's great.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to ask questions, put them in the chat. You can send them to me privately and I can read them out. But this is a unique opportunity to ask questions about the publishing process and this journal. So maybe I'll ask another one, and that is, do you envision having a target number of manuscripts in this journal, or is it just whatever surpasses the bar you feel is appropriate, that's the number that are going to get published?
Yeah, that's the second. Yeah. We don't have a fixed number. With like we just check the quality. Of course, we have some idea of what more or less is gonna be the estimated number, but we don't really have a fixed number. So please send us the best research you have without like limits.
Yeah, since it's an online journal, there are no there's not a maximum number of articles that can be published. And the other thing that we didn't explicitly state is that the peer-reviewed articles can be of any length. They can be short letters like the old PRL style. They can be longer, extended articles. I mean, I don't think, you don't want something too long, but there isn't any formal length limits or restrictions about the type of work that is published.
That's great. And is the journal going to be included in PubMed?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, PRL it is, right? Physical review letter is included, so it should be. Yeah, I mean, after.
Yeah, we will. That will make sure that happens.
Yeah, I mean, so the first 2 years. Yeah, the first 2 years are a little bit like tricky, right? Because there is now like journals are I mean, they are sorted in a way by Clevered, right? So there is some sort of feedback from Clevered Analytics to the journals itself by the impact factor and by other criteria. So with the current status right now, with the problems of like retraction and conflict of interest and all these kind of things, Clevered is becoming more and more stringent. So the criteria to get an impact factor are becoming more stringent. So it's gonna be, so the first couple of years are still developing, and then once the journal is developed, I think we might get PubMed, listed in PubMed, hopefully.
Yeah, I will make sure that happens.
Yeah,
because I need to publish in PubMed. I need to make sure my articles are in PubMed. Yeah, and the other thing that we've looked into that we've gotten very positive feedback on is being connected to the Reviewer Commons network. So this is a network of an initiative driven mostly from the HHMI and EMBO to have the review process happen first before articles are then sent to different journals. If you look up what journals are part of the Reviewer Commons network, it's eLife and then the PLOS journal, so another, and then the EMBO journal, so another family of nonprofit journals. And so, but we would be, there's PLOS computational biology, and eLife of course has some overlap, but we would really be one that had biological physics front and center in that network. So that would be, that's something else we're looking into as well.
Great. Okay, so we have a question from the chat. Wondering if PRX Life considers articles on biomaterials or biological soft matter.
Yeah, I'll attempt that one. That's a good question, and one close to my heart, right? Because this is definitely an area that I consider a fraction of my mind. So I think we want to make sure that this is a journal for biological physics, which means we want the ideas to be informing the physics of living systems. So if you use biological molecules and find a new material property, but don't reflect it back into how, say, how a cell system works, right, or some biological system works, that would not be a high priority for this journal to publish. That's really soft matter, right? So, but there, if you have connections to what the function is in a living system at any scale, then that would be of considerably higher impact. And I don't think, I mean, people have lots of different types of work that they do, but I don't think we want to, there's obviously a gray zone in there, but we do not want to become the journal of biomaterials. So this is something that we do get quite a few submissions on this, and so this is something that Serena and I are, and along with our editorial board, constantly evaluating as submissions come in. I asked Serena about my own work, right? Whether whether we think it would be suitable for this or not. I mean, so it's something that I'm definitely trying to think about seriously.
Great. I'm sure there's a lot of thought about these, like where to draw the catchment.
Yeah, we don't want to be exclusive, but at the same time, especially as we're starting the journal, we do need to make sure we have some breadth of focus, and the breadth of biological physics is so broad. And I think the types of work that's been submitted to the PR family tend to err on the side of soft matter already. So we want to be a little careful about not being you know, inclusive of the content that wasn't already being submitted to the PR family of, you know, to the PhysRev journals.
Yeah, I mean, ideally,
And that's our main
PRX
motivation. It's not because I don't like soft matter at all. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to say is like that like there are some areas that are very well covered by physical review, and we don't want to compete with our and like fellow journals like Physical Review Letter or Physical Review X. So they really cover this area very well. And I mean, for the area in which there is no coverage, we try to complement those papers that usually are not considered from other journals as well. So
yeah.
Although right now Physical Review X cover pretty much everything, but like we really like are a little bit lower than them, so that's a little bit the difference between the different journals.
Yeah. And there was a question in the chat about tissue engineering, and tissue engineering is certainly within the scope of PRX Life.
Yeah.
So do you want to comment any more about that in terms of applications versus knowledge generation in tissue engineering? Does that interface matter for decision making?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that if there's tools or insight, like I have, without knowing, it's hard to know from a but if there is, you know, we want new insight into biological physics questions, right? Now, if there's a new tool that can be broadly applied, or applications that can then provide new types of insight, I think that's something of interest, but it's hard to make a blanket statement on a comment without seeing the text or the figures. But I mean, you should definitely submit. You can submit, you know, submit the paper. You could also submit a pre-submission inquiry, you know, with the types of article, like the types of figures, and also like there's no formatting restrictions, right? So you should write the paper that you want to write and don't worry about changing the scope, right? You should be writing the papers that you want to write based on the science and engineering you're doing.
Yeah, I think this is important, right? We don't want to, like, so far, like if you want to publish in Physical Review, you need to like rewrite your manuscript, right? If you are submitting, like, I don't know, someone else and you want to publish in Physical Review, you need to restyle it for physics. For physics audience. I don't think this is a requirement for our journal. It's not, you don't have to rewrite it. Actually, the larger is, the broader is the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll ask another question, and that is, I was curious when you were talking about the ways that physical review in general highlights publications. through the different channels, which I certainly have found useful in terms of learning about papers and interesting studies that I wouldn't have otherwise. How do those get identified?
Well, so the physics editorial team, they actually like go over all the published manuscript on the last week, and then they select a few of them, and then they discuss together based on the scope, the impact, and the visibility. I mean, the topic, and they try to diversify in terms of topics, and they cover, like, of course, the most of the time they cover PRX and PRL. But then there are also a lot of PRE because of the topic is can sometimes is interesting for a broader audience, and that was funny. So this is more or less so the criteria of selection is different from viewpoints. It definitely has to be big, a much bigger impact. Synopses are a little bit like less selective. But overall, it's like the idea is to try to communicate what's happening in physics to physicists, to the members of the society. So that's more or less the scope of physics. Yeah.
Great.
And I mean, usually the papers that they get picked up by viewpoints, their visibility is really enhanced. So you see it from the download of the website. You can see that they really help in terms of like improving and reaching out to audiences that weren't like supposed to read your manuscript. So because it's out of their like expertise, for example. So
great. Okay, are there any further questions? Now is your chance to ask. Maybe you also have a question about your own research area and whether it is covered, or advice for submissions that could be of interest to you or others. Give another few seconds for someone to unmute.
Maybe
or
I have a question for them. Where do they publish their best papers and why?
Well, that's a pointed question, Serena.
Yeah. And why? And I mean, if they will consider PRX Life.
All right, so the audience is being put on the spot. Feel free to unmute and answer, or you can put it in the chat.
Or also another way of asking this question, let's point it is like, what do you appreciate about journals that you enjoy publishing in?
Nobody is.
I wonder about the demographics of the audience and how many of them are PIs versus students and so on. Okay.
Here we go. Okay.
We have another question. I'll just read this out so that it's there for the recording, and then turn this over to you. So how would papers that identify the role of physical properties of biological systems, cells, tissues, etc., on the physiological properties, so the role of physical properties on the physiological properties, fit into PRX Life, even if those don't dig deeply into the underlying physical mechanisms? I guess what I'm asking is, how central for PRX Life is an underpinning theory or mechanism to interpret the data in the manuscript?
Yeah, that's a great question. Also one that I struggle with. So I think that if you're talking about an experimental manuscript that shows new types of experimental measurements, and has some that's been making physical properties or provides a new way to make physical properties, and you show those data, while we would really love to have new theories of what's causing those physical properties, I think our tolerance for having limited physical insight is going to be bigger for experimental data papers like this, that actually bring new experiments to the field. So if you're able to make a measurement that then spawns new theoretical insight, that is something that we are interested in, even if that paper in and of itself is not providing the physical mechanism.
Yeah, I think this is what really actually I would like to emphasize even more, like that, like we are open for this kind of papers. And of course, I mean, evaluating those manuscripts, it's a little bit more difficult, can be more difficult, but still, I mean, I think we really want to see those. Yeah.
I think what would be really helpful when those types of when those papers are submitted is in the especially in the cover letter, emphasize and in your article, right, when you write it, emphasize what is new, right, what is the new measurement that you're doing, like, and motivate the measurements. And so it's really clear what is the new advance to the field that's being contributed, right? And it's okay if it doesn't call, if all the physical insight's not in there. But I mean, especially with experiments. I mean, experiments are multifaceted. They require lots of different types of, same with theory does, but if there's new experimental approaches, that's something we really want to be open to.
I want to kind of respond to the question that that y'all asked. And I've said this before to Serena, but I think the key question that for me is like, okay, for work that does have like biojournals that are good homes for it, I can submit it there and know that I'll get biologists' eyes on it, in addition to eyes of physicists in that community, because that journal has established itself.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what the kind of the pitch is for submitting that kind of work to this journal.
Like, why would you change where you're submitting the work to it, where you feel like you already have a good home for it?
Yeah, again,
Yeah.
I think it depends where is the home is, right? Where the home
Yeah.
is. The home is a commercial publisher. I warn you, like we need to be better consumer from what we eat to how we publish. I think like shop logo, right, and publish society. That's my only pitch. But like, and then to create this home here, so to make sure that we can reach biologists eventually, right? So the vision will be to get there. But like, I think we need a good quality, good content, good quality manuscript, and then biologists will read us.
Well, and my feeling is that people read papers based on the quality of the individual manuscripts. No one picks up a physical journal, right, anymore. Right. So we're not this journal does not ask you, we're not asking you to change the style in which you're writing the manuscripts for this journal. Right. We're not asking you to write a PRL. Right. We want you to write in the same style that you would write to that journal, but then maybe, not suppress all your theory in a SI. Right. So that would be my other pitch here, is that don't change the way you're writing and communicating to your audiences.
Eventually you can include more theory there, and eventually this could become even stronger, right? Because you can mix them both. But I get your point. I mean, biologists don't read the theory, so I get your point. But still, I mean, maybe
they might be. Maybe they should be reading theory. I mean, that's the thing. I think fields don't build if we don't publish things that are what we want the future of the field to be. Right. So so if you are including, you should be including, like, don't feel like you have to change your style of communication. You should be doing what you think is needed for the field. Like, I'm sorry, I'm yammering on now. But also, like, your desire to publish in a journal should be based on like what your editorial experience is, what your reviewer experience is. Do you get good reviews, right? So all this stuff is something that only, especially at PRX Life, we have to build up a reviewer base, right? And we have to educate each other on what types of articles this field wants, right? So that's all stuff that there's only one competitive journal in my field that is what I would consider my biology go-to. And all those things have been built over relationships over 10 years. So this is what we need to do for PRX Life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. Are there any further questions or comments or responses to the requests about where you publish or what you consider important? I think you certainly helped to convince all of us and bring front to mind anyway the trade-offs between different types of journals as well as the scope of content. Just there's a lot of things that go into making a journal the right one and the right choice. And it's exciting to have another one in the portfolio, particularly one that comes from APS and that targets this intersection with the physics of life. So
And also, I mean, there is also some part that like DBIO will be stronger if PRX Life is stronger. Yeah, there is a connection to that like I think nobody emphasizes, but there is a, like, we are not directly related because we want to be independent, but still, I mean, if the journal go well, I mean, the society will look at DBIO in a different way, you know? So I think it's worth like putting some effort to build this, right?
I think there's a lot of momentum right now in the biological physics as a really important discipline within physics, from the decadal survey to the recognition of physics of life, and as a subject matter taught at colleges to this new journal. And so the momentum is there, and it's up to all of us to help grow this.
But also anecdotally, why you want to choose PRX Life over a biological journal? If you didn't have this like interaction with this biological journal, it goes well. But if you want to establish a new one, you have to face a series of challenges. For example, I just sent a paper to a biologist, and then they come back to me, it's like, I already showed this. I don't understand why there is a theoretical part, there is a mathematical model that need to prove it, right? So it's really like, so that's okay if you already made a passage and now you get very good reviews, but like there are many people that don't have good reviews in biological journals. So I think we want to try to have an audience of biological physicists that know how to review these papers.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So the hour is rapidly ending. And so I think this will be a good point to stop. And first of all, please join me in thanking Margaret and Serena for providing all this insight into the newest journal in our field. So thank you. And I hope that you will join us for future APS DBIO online events. Stay tuned to your inbox and or our website for more information. The next event will be coming up soon. So thanks, everyone.